So tonight I thought I'd share with you kind of the format that I use to support myself every day with the Eightfold Path. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Buddha's Eightfold Path, it really is it's a kind of way of viewing contemplative practice and the aspects that are important to cultivate over the period of one's practice life or life. And so for just a couple of minutes, I'll go over those and how they're grouped. There is the personal integrity or ethics aspects of the path. And there are three of those for reflection that we do as practitioners. Wise speech, kind of the exploration of that and the power of speech and what's appropriate there. Wise action, as we put our intentions and speech into motion. How are we working with that? And wise livelihood, and these are all called right speech, right livelihood, right action. But they have to do with what's known as sila or personal integrity as a cornerstone of the practice. So there's those three aspects. Then there's the mental discipline or the mental training. And we just exercised that. And the components of that are right mindfulness, paying attention to what's happening when it's happening, the right amount, and then right effort. Not too tight, not too loose, just the right effort. And then right concentration or right samadhi, where you're gathering the energies of the heart and mind together to see more clearly, to understand more deeply. And then the third section of the Eightfold Path is the wisdom section. And that has to do with wise view or wise understanding and wise or right intention. And so the wise view, it's like all these are developed simultaneously. Our perspective, the German word Weltanschauung, or our view, our understanding of how nature works. And the Buddha, with his students over the years, developed little support systems to help students bring their minds to these issues. Issues around ethics, issues around how to practice, issues around just how this creation works. And so one thing that was well established, and if you go to any Buddhist monastery, they will chant the refuges and the precepts. They do some other kinds of chanting too. And I've found that over the years, I do chant these every morning, and I also reflect on them. So it's more than just some kind of rote thing. I try to bring them to life, and I might focus on one aspect a little more than another. And so I'm going to chant these in Pali, and then I'll just highlight them a little bit and talk about how they incline the mind towards the entirety of this practice. We are a Buddhist group. That's what we told the government. And we We're a nonprofit Buddhist religious organization. And yes, we do encompass all the stress reduction techniques and ways of being, which are extremely valuable in this world. And there's a lot more that's offered through the Buddha's teachings. And for 45 years, he was trying to figure out, how do I communicate this stuff? And how do I communicate it with an illiterate rice farmer? And how do I talk to royalty? And how do I frame this? And how can it be sensible? Well, in the modern years, 2,500 years later, it's like Western psychology and has totally rediscovered all these things, and it's like for the first time, which is really kind of exciting. And all the researchers and everybody's like, well, what happens in the brain? And we're changing the organic structure of the brain doing these practices, and it's all kind of there's a wave of interest in these teachings, and they're ancient. And so over my 4 decades or more of kind of looking at these practices, I really work with the whole context of the practice in the Eightfold Path. And it helps me to do the refuges and precepts every day. And I do an evening prayer also. And I probably shared it here. And the evening prayer will be the last chant that I do. That's chanted in all the monasteries and has been for a long time all over the world. So they go like this, and I'll do one section. I'll give a quick translation. Do another section. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammang saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Tatyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatyampi Dhammang saranam gacchami, Tatyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Those are the refuges. And essentially it's taking refuge, and that's said 3 times, in the Buddha, both the historical figure and teacher, and Buddha nature, which we all have within us, and when we're not frightened or under great duress or overly anxious, we can contact that goodness. It's that kind of natural compassion and open-heartedness and clarity of thinking that's available. So it's taking refuge in both the teacher that kind of got this ball rolling, and also our own capacity that we can feel. And then it's taking refuge in the Dharma, which is, one way to look at it, is the formal teachings. This guy had a curriculum that he developed and honed and changed over his 45 years as a teacher. But it's also the Dharma. I like to look at it as the ways of nature. What are the key fundamental aspects of nature that it's, if we don't get in line with it, we're just gonna be in agony and suffer more and more. Things like impermanence. Things like the idea of if we grasp hard onto something that we like and try to hold on to it, it's really going to hurt when it changes and moves, because that's just the nature of everything. Whether we're holding on to a brand new computer that we like, or a relationship, or whatever. And likewise, if we're pushing away and thrashing with everything that's unpleasant, trying to configure our lives to be all together and forever, it's just not going to work. Nature doesn't work like that. So that's the kind of getting with nature. And then there's the Sangha, taking refuge in the Sangha. And there's different ways to look at that. You can look at the historical. We're all alive now, and we're doing these practices, and we're the last we're the top of the reef. I always like to use that analogy on a coral reef. We're the living part. And we've got our moment in the sun, and there's a lot of activity and color and life. And it's all built on the exoskeletons of generations and generations and generations before. So we have these teachings to explore, play with, if you will, so we can reflect on, gosh, I'm sitting here, I'm alive, but this has been going on for a very long time. And a lot of these practices predate the Buddha. We don't know. He learned from teachers who learned from teachers who learned from teachers. Or we can look at it as, here we are, and our Sangha is, yes, our community, our family, etc., and our ancestors. Back and back and back and back and back. You know? So when we're sitting, I like to conjure up my ancestors, a kind of row of monks and nuns that go back and back, feeling that I am a kind of disciple of these teachings, and it meant so much to me. So there's kind of enrichment process when I sit down in the morning, and I'll do these out loud, and I get up before anybody in the house, and I'm in a place where I'm not disturbing people. And then there's the precepts, and they kind of go hand in hand. And the precepts are essentially about non-harming in a way, And there's you'll see various lists of them. I just do 5. And I'll chant them, and then I'll just touch on them. Panatipata Veramani Sikapadam Samadhyami Adinadana Veramani Sikapadam Samadhyami Kamesu Michakara Veramani Sikapadam Samadhyami Musawada Veramani Sikapadam Samadhyami Surara Merya Magapamathatana Veramani Sikapadam Samadhyami Idam Me Silam Magapalananasa Pachayo Hotu. So the precepts, the first one is take on the training of not killing. And it's more than, these are not commandments. It's like, well, what is it? What is this thing about killing? Where does it, do I support capital punishment or just wars? Or do I support the women's rights to have abortions or not? There's so much gray, and what about the enslavement of animals for the meat industry? And, So there's a whole reflection there, And the second one has to do with taking what is not offered. Yeah, it's not dipping in the bins at Whole Foods and having some snacks while you're shopping, but it's so much more. What is the proper footprint? How do I do that in this world where resources are limited on a planet that's under stress? And the third one is about sexual misconduct. So some of us are of the age where we're not really getting too much into that anymore, but there's a reflection around how do I support issues? What issues do I support around sexuality? How do I support the freedom of people to have a sexual orientation that's maybe under siege? So there's reflections there. And am I supporting misogyny or one thing or another by certain things that I buy or watch, etc.? And then there's taking on the training of speech, and how does that? How am I with that? Do I tell the truth all the time, and do I use it as a cudgel sometimes? Or is there a series of white lies or this or that? So there's reflection there, and then there's the training around substances. How do I honor this body? What do I take in? What don't I use? And it's around the clarity of the mind, what supports that and what doesn't. So these are all contemplations and reflections. And so when I chant, I like to not just do the rote chant. I like to think, if I'm doing the refuges, well, what is this Buddha nature? And do I feel it now? Where, and who was this person? And what was their energy like? What was it like maybe to be with a person like that who had such kind of compassion and wise kind of understanding and seeing? And likewise with the precepts and things like that, well, where am I? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What needs more attention? And then the final chant that I do is very short. And I like it because it kind of hits at the crux of the practice. It's anicca vata sankhara upadeva ya dhammino upajitva nirjanti tesum vipassamo sukho. And it means all conditioned things are impermanent. They arise and pass away. Understanding this deeply brings the greatest happiness, which is peace. And that's what's chanted in all the monasteries in the last thing they chant in the evening. So it's that, and I love to reflect on that. It's like, yeah, it's all moving. And it's intellectual, but then kind of turning to the practice and feeling how everything's kind of changing internally, paying attention to that. The aliveness of the body is just the kind of this bubbling kind of miracle that's going on. And of course there are changing emotions, all kinds of changing thoughts, etc., etc. So it's that cornerstone of the Buddha's teaching that, look, it's all moving fast. Grasping, it's not going to work out in the long run. holding tight isn't going to work in the long run. So that offering that he made, or those offerings, I've kind of cobbled together and I use them. It's way different than sitting down. For me, it's been way more beneficial than just sitting down and just trying, okay, now I'm going to try to catch my breath. It's like this kind of, crescendo moving into the practice. And there's a reflection, I take my time on those things. And so for those of you who've been practicing for a while, you probably have your own methods of kind of entering the sacred space, so to speak. And those of you that are beginning, it's kind of an interesting exploration to try different things and see what fits for you. I like to use the phrase, everyone's a contemplative artist and you paint your own palette. We come in here and we share things and you try them out, and certain things say, well, I'm gonna work that one, or no, that's not for me. But that's the practice. It's like it goes on, and there's adjustments that are made and things added. I remember Heather and I were in a group for many, many years, and one time, and these were diverse practitioners, contemplatives, everybody was practicing for 25 years or more, whatever. And so we went around the room, and there were kind of people that were doing some Native American practices mixed in with Buddhism, Sufism mixed in, so maybe even some Hindu practices, Buddhist practice. So we went around the room, and everybody shared how they were practicing. And it was like, wow, you're doing that? You're doing that? I mean, that was very... I found it really enjoyable, and there's certain things I picked up. I said, well, I'm going to try that, So it is a process, and we work with posture. We work with how we support it. What is the best way? This eightfold path, which is the way out of suffering, when we're paying attention to our personal integrity, when we're cultivating the mental and heart training, and when we're reflecting more and more of the time on the kind of the view, the perspective of just how nature works. That's all that together is the practice. So for me, kind of the refuges, precepts, and that little evening prayer I like doing in the morning. I've also talked about here the 5 daily recollections. I kind of alternate that with the evening prayer, but I'm not going to talk about that tonight. So I thought we would take a few minutes, and if you could get into groups of 3, and see about, there's a couple of, just as I shared the way I begin my practice, if you would share how you do it, and if you don't do anything or you don't have a practice, how might you envision, or what's your intention with your practice? How would you like to support it? So get in groups of 3, and I'll repeat those questions. And you might learn something from your wise friend. Or groups of, if there's not enough for 3, do a group of 4. So come into silence for a moment. Come into silence for a moment, and as a contemplative, kind of reflect on what has worked for you in the various practices that you've done over the years? What supports you? Yeah, how do you support your practice? And if you're just beginning your practice, what is your intention for your practice? And how will you manifest that? How will you support it? How do you support your practice? Do you have any rituals or forms that you've found beneficial? And maybe it's kind of slipped away from you for a while, but you remember when you were doing it and went, wow, you might think, I might pick that up again. But it also might be beneficial for your neighbor. And so the person with the shortest hair will go first in your group. And then the person with the next longest hair will go after that. And so we've got about 10 minutes, so take about 2 minutes or so, 3 minutes. Begin to finish up. So it's a fertile topic for contemplatives. How do we do this? What are we doing? How can we support ourselves? When we talk about Sangha, which we are, which your little subgroup was, we're going against the generalized stream of our culture when we pick up these practices and care about them. And so it can really be helpful to kind of cultivate our friendships with our practicing pals, and sometimes sharing in detail what we do is like, wow, we learn stuff from each other. So I can't encourage you more, to be in touch with each other. Ask clarifying questions. How's your practice going? What are you doing exactly? So we're out of time, and you all will use your practice when you listen or don't listen to the State of the Union address. And you can watch the different emotions coming up and work with them and skillfully. So whatever they might be. So until next time, thank you very much. Take care.